All right, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We are the Graham Planning and Zoning Board, and we're here tonight to hear the city's business that's on the agenda. If you're here to speak tonight, you will be heard. And if I don't call on you, just raise your hand and we'll be glad to call on. Looks like we got a packed house and it's gonna be hard for me to pick it out. Who wants to talk? All right, having said that, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
In the middle of it.
All right, is everybody, before I ask for a motion on the minutes, I'm gonna do a roll call. Mr. Jerome Bass,
Present.
Mr. Eric Christmas,
I'm here as well.
Chair Dean Ward is here, Mr. Michael Benish,
Here.
and Mr. Tony Bailey.
Here.
All right, I'll entertain a motion if everyone's had a chance to read the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as read,
I'll second it.
presented, excuse me.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. I see the old business there that's going to be carried over. Number 6, A, B, and C is going to be carried over to the February 15th meeting. Correct?
Yes, sir. Do y'all need to make a motion on that to table it?
Yes, we will. I'll make a motion that we carry this over to the February 15th meeting as requested by the applicant.
I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, let's go to number 7, new business. And item number A.
All right. So I guess I'll start. Here before you for the new business request A, we have a rezoning request at the locations of 302 North Maple Street and 203 and 207 and 213 West Market Street. This is a request to rezone approximately 1.15 acres of property at 302 North Maple Street and 203, 207, and 213 West Market Street from R7 High Density Residential to B1 Central Business. The general area subject to the potential rezoning is comprised of numerous older homes, mostly in poor to fair condition, as well as a mixture of vacant buildings and vacant lots. Because the B1 is a permissive district with a variety of low-intensity commercial, office, and even mixed-use residential uses permitted, it does present a rather intriguing development scenario to try and spur infill and redevelopment that ties into the downtown business district. The biggest challenges will be to address off-street parking and to ensure that uses proposed are compatible with the surrounding residential areas. Finally, this property is listed on the future land use map as downtown residential, which lists among its uses neighborhood-oriented commercial, small professional offices, live-work units, and home occupations, provided they do not generate excessive traffic and parking. Given the location and the likely development patterns in this area, central business would be a compatible use in staff's opinion, provided that off-street parking needs can be met to serve the proposed use. If this rezoning is approved, staff would ask that the applicant commit to reaching out to Preservation North Carolina about potentially moving the historic structures off-site for preservation and restoration. And if not successful in that endeavor, that he reach out to Preservation Burlington to see if they would be willing to go through each structure to be demolished for salvage to reuse materials in other historic homes. And as you can see, we provided you with multiple maps showing the zoning and the future land use map of the areas and where the areas are defined. Mr. Jason Cox is not here with us tonight to present on his behalf. I have supplied you all with a letter that he has presented to you all, basically covering what he was going to discuss here tonight. and has asked me to present that as a matter of record. So if you all don't mind, I will go ahead and read through Mr. Cox's proposal to you all, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yes, sir. From Mr. Cox, due to a number of positive COVID cases at my son's school, I cannot be present at the planning board meeting. However, I ask that the planning board still review this request, and I wish to provide the following for your consideration. The revised application before you is in line with concerns voiced by both the planning board and later city council meetings several months ago. In short, it is exactly what was previously requested. At that time, there was concern expressed as to whether there was a possible historical significance for two specific properties along North Maple Avenue as part of the larger original request of approximately around 3.65 acres. The revised application addresses these limited concerns, containing neither of the parcels of concern and being less than 1/3 the original size, consisting of shallow series of parcels along Market Street, which itself already serves a much larger project in the form of Oneida Mills Law. This reflects the wise use of an existing active corridor without added infrastructure, in alignment with the goals of the city's comprehensive growth plan, while also being fiscally responsible by encouraging infill development. The reduced scale of this request provides an important opportunity to showcase how small infill projects can form the fabric of great communities, creating an environment that allows walkability, promotes a diversity of housing choices, and provides ready access to local services for those who live in surrounding neighborhoods. The city has an obligation to serve all its residents, including those who value or rely upon the ability to walk or bike to obtain groceries, healthcare, and other services. Our community faces tremendous pressure. To simply not grow within the downtown and surrounding is not a practical option. The city itself has regularly expanded its boundaries, adding industrial and other development that continues to create needed jobs and increase average wages. The outcome of this is a growing number of citizens who wish to be able to live, work, and play in the city of Graham. These are quote unquote good problems, as former Mayor Jerry Peterman would say, but this does present an important question. Will this growth reflect a healthy variety of options for everyone's needs? Or will it continue to be dominated by suburban development of former farmland, of strip malls, and resulting traffic built in even further distances from downtown businesses and requiring ever greater parking to do so? This is an important pilot project with the potential to demonstrate thoughtful infill development that lessens vehicle trips in favor of walking and biking and allows for needed growth while limiting sprawl. The creation of artificial shortages in housing and in spaces for local small businesses to take root benefits a select few at the expense of many. I have been in active historical rehabilitation and placemaking efforts within Graham for several years now. I spend most of my days downtown, regularly walking from my office to this property as well as local businesses and restaurants nearby. More people should be afforded the opportunity to do the same. And that is the aim of this project. We have seen great recent success in Graham, and I know we all wish to see that continue. We all wish to see the success that success continue. It is my hope that the planning board will recognize the opportunity this project presents to serve as an example of revitalization, which retains and extends the charm and character of our downtown and surrounding neighborhoods, all while balancing the needs of current and future citizens. Sincerely, Jason M. Cox. And that is the extent of Mr. Cox's proposal to you all. I will open it up for any comments if you have them or questions.
These pictures provided are the other side of the street.
Yes, sir. I did notice that as well. So yeah, these aren't the properties in particular, I guess, that are noted on the Google Maps that he is asking for a rezoning request for. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Chrisman?
Right.
Yes,
These,
sir.
these properties are across the street.
Yes, sir.
Block, yeah, the other block.
What?
The preceding block
Yeah. The house is right there.
and this one down here.
Yes, or no, for that, yeah, for that lot, yeah.
I'll pull it up for you all right here. I guess it just, one of the things that was
Hey, we can see on the map where it is.
Yes, sir. I'm about to see if I can get right here. I think this is where it is. So this is where it's shown right now.
Hmm.
But I believe these are the parcels down here
Mhm.
that
Right.
they were looking to rezone, like this one.
And those two empty houses down there.
Yes, sir. These two right here, correct?
Yes.
Right.
There's another house around the corner.
Oh yeah, this corner up here. Right here, correct?
Yep.
So those are the four in question for this rezoning project. I do apologize. I was not aware that these were not the correct graphics shown. But hopefully the Google Map compromise will satisfy whatever needs you all need. And if you'd like me to go anywhere else, I'd be more than happy to go back around the corner.
That's fine.
I'll just leave it right here.
Any further questions for the planner?
I got a couple.
Yes, sir.
For B1 businesses, what lot line distances do they have to respect? What's in terms of, how
So-
close to lot lines that can they build on?
So the B1, I believe their lot lines are not confined by any setbacks. So their building lot lines are relatively close compared to what it would be for normal residential.
Right,
Whereas for something in say R7 has to go 8 feet off the sides, a B1 district does not have any that kind of confine the shape. So they basically can use the whole proximity of their lot lines. Granted, if there's anything additional in here as well, I should.
Isn't it 20 foot off of the back property line?
Let's see, quick, I'll pull it up for you. Just so you have it.
I think it was kind of the same discussion that they had at council the other night about the Pine Street.
Yes, sir.
It had some type of limitation.
Yeah, so,
It's either the front or the rear.
yes, sir. So the front is 1 foot for each 2 feet of building height over 50, which I don't think that would really pertain in this scenario. They do have a side yard width of 10 feet adjacent to lot zoned residential. So if your question was in concern to if the B1 was going to be next to a residentially zoned or used property, they have 10 feet that they must set back next to those properties. And the rear yard is the same, Mr. Ward, in regards to that 10 feet to lot zone residential. So it's those 10 sides and 10 in the back that they'd have to meet to if they were surrounded by lot zoning residential.
Which they are in this case.
I'd have to look into on the zoning map to see exactly what the surrounding lot parcels are zoned as.
Based on what I see, they're all residential.
Yeah, all R7.
they're all R7.
Okay.
What are our parking for our B1 businesses? Do we have any guesstimate of what parking needs would be for this?
So as you all may be aware, we don't require off-street parking in the B1 district. So it is not a requirement that they provide anything on site for parking. It's supposed to be quote unquote all for like on street in that downtown corridor. So it'd be a remedy that they'd have to figure out how to make the parking aspect of it work. I don't know of any remedies that they have at the moment. I can't speak on any either. I assume that that'd probably be another instance in which they discuss at a future, the city council meeting as well, and further discussion with Mr. Cox in between them and planning and you all as well. But I have not been made aware of any remedies to the off-street parking discussion. I do apologize.
The building across the street from there has no parking. And of course, that's an old building, but that's all street parking.
Yes,
There.
sir. And that's the B1 district, of course, as I mentioned, we don't require for any on-street
Right.
parking. So that's kind of why this building right here does not have that access, is because it falls in that B1 district, I believe, or used to.
It's in I1. No, it may be, it's in B2. According to what I show here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pull the zoning map up so I can tell y'all for sure.
What is this labeled? We've looked at it.
Oh, okay. Now I wasn't even looking at the pictures y'all had. Lord have mercy.
No, we've looked at it somewhere else.
I got you.
Any further questions for the planner at this time? Anyone here to speak about this particular matter? Come on up. If you would, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I am Kimberly Nelson, and this is my mother, Sharon Larzalier. And if you want to turn that map just to do a 360 up there on that screen,
Right here.
go down to the next house to your left. I'm sorry. Keep going right there and you see that house right there on the right?
Right here.
And that would be us.
That's our property.
We reside at 305 North Maple Street. We are currently, I guess, and we also own the property to the side, which has recently been combined together.
It would be what was 303 North Maple, but they combined it
Just this past
just
year.
this year to make it 305.
We owned both properties, but
Yeah.
we just recently deeded them together. This is my mother.
Can I get her name and address also?
Sharon Larzalier.
Sharon,
Larzalier. That's
Can you-
Larzeliere.
305 North Maple Street.
Get that, Darby? Okay, thank you. Now, continue on, please.
Obviously, when we got the notice that they're wanting to rezone this to business, we were a little, don't we have enough of that already encroaching? If I'm not mistaken, approximately 10 to 15 years ago, they wanted to turn this area into a historic district. And now we are looking to turn it into a business area. Not quite sure how those ideals combine. I do understand that, as mentioned earlier, the properties, some of them are in fair to dilapidated conditions. Mainly, I think because they were rental properties owned by the same family.
I don't have any problem with those properties that are in bad condition being removed in newer houses built there, residence, but not business. And the Rodriguez that's on the corner of the building is not in use.
yes,
It
I
has
know, yes,
Not been in use for many, many
quite a
years.
long, quite a long time.
Yes, that building, so just a little background. My family, my parents' family, and have owned this house since 1970.
This house was built in around, I know the books say 19 something, but it was built around 1895. And it is still in very good condition. We make sure we keep it up.
As far as the rest of the properties on Maple Street, North Maple Street, that runs up into Main Street there at the corner with the Nazarene Church, what used to be the Nazarene Church. Our particular home has been owned we're the longest owning, other than Bank Smith, which is down a little bit on the left, and no one is currently in that residence, I don't believe. But it is still owned by the family. So once again, this was property that will become mine within the next year. It will be planned to be moved over to me. So I technically will be the property owner within a year. I grew up in this house. My children have grown up in and around this house, and my plan was to leave this to my children. One of the big concerns I have is I haven't heard anything about what they're wanting to put here. I've tried to listen. What is it, B1? Is that the zoning, what they're trying to move it to?
Yes, ma'am.
I did look up all that information, and, it could be I know they're stating small town charm, but B1, if I'm not mistaken, covers anything from a pharmacy to a convenience store, to an ABC store bar.
That's correct.
What I did see was that the only way it could be used for dwelling purposes as a B1 is if that property is listed above a business or contractors are being housed there for a particular business on that property, which obviously there is no business on that property. So if I'm misunderstanding, it cannot be used for any type of dwelling, which if it were going to be moved into like an apartment complex, okay. But you've got businesses coming up directly in front of my house, in front of, other people. Why not? I know that it's encroaching further and further. Eventually, if we continue to move the zoning into business up this way, eventually it's going to end up all the way up to Main Street. I obviously also heard some comments about the future development, which I have yet, I don't know what all that entails. Maybe I should.
The house next door to ours on the other side looks dilapidated, but they are in the process. They have completely gutted the inside of that house. That house is being completely remodeled inside and out so that it's going to be a showplace.
Yes, the house next to us on the left, which sets back further from the road from our house, was recently purchased by a contractor, and it is being remodeled with, I'm assuming, the intention to flip, because the contractor actually has a farm out in the country. I doubt he'd want to move. So there is definitely opportunity for growth, for remodeling, for updating in the area. I would much rather see that happen than have it turned into a business use. Because there are already plenty of businesses in downtown Graham that are not being used. I mean, could those spaces not be utilized to build the business? We walk to Graham all the time. I don't see the need for it to be moving in and encroaching on the residential areas. That's just my,
Thank you.
anything else?
Thank you.
I have a question. Is your house where the shop, the old garage behind it, is that the house
It
beside
is.
it?
Yes,
What did that used to be?
Bradshaw's, it used to be owned by the Bradshaws, and that was when he owned it, he had that garage as a warehouse for some insulation company. But when we bought the house in 1970, it became totally residential.
Yeah, but it looked commercial.
It
There's a
was,
city back off the
you know,
road.
it was always residential. I think way back then, like I said, we've owned the property since 1970. So we're going to say back in the 50s or 60s at least, because as long as we've owned it, it was never used for any commercial use at all. I do believe that the Bradshaws back in maybe 50s or 60s some point did lease to a friend of theirs the use of storing
Yeah.
whatever. I
wasn't an
mean, it was not
actual
used as
business.
a selling,
Yeah.
people coming in and buying stuff. I believe it was just being used as a warehouse
Storage.
for,
So like a garage or something.
Like a
that.
garage, right?
yeah,
Are you-
it's a
you-
big garage.
Are
It's
you
a-
referring to the building on the corner?
No, just
if you go
just go up the street a little bit.
You
This
go
is
up,
yours,
just,
Cameron.
just past it and then.
And then look down the driveway.
and Take a right.
There.
Yes.
Yeah. there.
Oh, okay, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
I mean,
huge
it looked like a service station garage or something,
Yeah, that would be my car.
because I've walked by there. Up, it used to be the
It's
Methodist.
actually, it's actually a very big garage. It'll hold 6 cars, but it's
Wow.
only 2 bays.
Wow.
It's 3 cars deep. And my father had in the side of it had a little, shop. It was used as his workshop. He was a wood,
That'd make an awesome workshop.
right? It's definitely
Yeah, when I was back there last time, it looked like there was doing some work back there,
back.
up in the garage.
Oh, well, yeah, we were cleaning it out. But yeah, my father, when he passed away in 2013, he was a tool and die maker. So, and he
had
was
every
very big
tool
into
you could
woodwork and
imagine.
projects.
Okay.
And every tool imaginable. So yes, since he passed, we just kind of slowly but surely, it's a lot.
Okay, the church up the street used to be a Methodist church.
Actually, it was a Nazarene church.
Actually, before that, it was a Methodist.
Oh,
church.
really?
I was baptized there. Thank you very much.
Oh, see, so you definitely know that.
I know that area well. Dr. Hawkins lived on that street. About 6 houses up
Oh, okay.
years ago.
Miss Kimberly, the house that is covered by the trees,
Mm-hmm.
did your mother mention that they're redoing that one?
Yes, so that is the current house that's being remodeled. It is, they have added, the inside of the house has been completely gutted.
Right.
And they have added at least a room to 2 rooms on the back that you can't see from here, obviously. And they've got a lot going on with it. They were actually there today, so I'm not exactly sure when they'll be finished, but you know, because we're the nosy neighbors, we keep a watch on it.
Further questions?
I've always wanted to walk back there down the driveway and look around that garage, but I was suddenly get shot. So
Might get yelled at, but not. Also, the parking, just a little note, the Maple Street is a no parking, so that entire street is no parking allowed. So any type of parking that NJR, NS, I don't even know what the name of the company is anymore, would want, they would have to be just on that side parking there unless they choose parking, but obviously hoping that they don't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. First thing, that's a big drive.
All right.
I know.
Let's have some discussion here. It's been this board's practice over the years. If the petitioner wasn't here, we either tabled it or denied it. I've got a lot of questions that I want to ask, and I don't think Cameron is the appropriate one to ask about what type of business is going in there, or how many businesses are going in there, how many stories it's going to be. And I don't think that this is the appropriate zoning for that lot, a conditional zoning maybe, but a B1 to where they have no parking. And we're going to put, not knowing what type of businesses, how many cars out on the street. So I don't want to turn nothing down without giving someone a opportunity to come back. And it's unfortunate that, COVID's everywhere.
Right.
And what is the board's consensus? Do they want to proceed forward, or?
I'll make a motion to table this and give Jason a chance to come before the board and have the planner talk to him about the possibility of a conditional rezoning instead of B1.
I mean, it's very obvious the council's decision and what they took the other night on the B1 in Graham, extending the downtown further and further out and with no parking is not something that the council is going to support, not knowing what's going to go on the property. So I would like to,
I made that motion.
and do I hear a second on
I
Mr.
second
Christmas?
it.
Well, yeah, I can see it.
So we have a motion to table this to the February the
There we-
15th
And-
meeting.
And approach Mr. Cox about conditional rezoning. Changing it from B1 request to a conditional rezoning request.
And with that being said, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? We did not pass it. It's just been tabled to next month, to the 22nd, the 15th. You feel free to come back on the 15th and talk again and listen and see what you can find out. Mr. Cox does not have to tell the planner or us what he's going to do there, but it would be in his best interest to reveal what's going to go there or what type of business is going to go there in order for us to make a good decision.
Real quick question, would our petitions helpful?
No,
Okay, I just wanted to ask.
No.
before I-
your petition's not help bring the people. If the people in the community don't want that in their neighborhood, their voice is better heard in person.
Mr. Cox has a similar
Goes a long way.
place planned on Marshall behind Forgotten Road Ales. Forgotten Road Ales, yeah. That he's got a commercial building downstairs and apartments upstairs. So he's got a architect's drawing there. That I don't think there's, other than an architect's drawing or rendition, it's the only thing he's got there. But I think that's the kind of building he's got in mind. But that's not a B1 business, not a B1
And those
district.
are apartments that he's looking at on.
Right. Well,
Business first floor, apartments, second,
yeah,
third floor.
the second floor, you didn't have a third floor. But yeah.
And that's more backed up to the city.
Yeah,
So, but we're not going to consider anything on his property tonight. We've moved it over to next month and I'd like to see y'all back again,
15?
the 15th, 6:30.
if you're concerned about the district, the area potentially becoming a historic district, which you'd have more control over what another community would have control of what's actually built there, you might want to approach that board and say you're interested in a historic district concept.
Especially what's in the garage.
And Ms. Kimberly, as Chairman Dean said, there is strength in numbers. If you have your residents, the surrounding neighbors and their concerns that could be expressed here, that would go a long way in protecting that area for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, Cameron, let's move on to the next item.
Sounds good. All right, the next item on your agenda is a text amendment to our development ordinance labeled as AM 2201. This proposal is, staff has proposed the language below to create standards for fences and walls, which are currently lacking in the development ordinance. This amendment defines fences and walls and sets fence types, heights, locations, etc., without requiring a permit. By doing so, we are allowing applicants flexibility to install fencing, but we also provide the city with enforcement tools to prevent incompatible fencing from being installed. And I could read through all the red line language if you would like.
I'd like for you to compare the ordinance that we have with what we got here, other than this vision and clearance.
That is it.
That's it.
Yes, sir. So that's redlining in and adding in all the additional regulation on top of the vision clearance that's already kind of in place. Because the only thing that we have in place for fence standards is the vision clearance. We don't have any regulations on height in specifically. We do have regulation on height in some specific instances, say for covering of HVAC systems in the back of a food line, or covering of a dumpster inside of a residential development. Those are the only kind of fence standards that we have in place right now, but not for a resident who's calling us asking, how high can our fence be? Where can we place our fence, et cetera, along the lines, you know, and a lot of what is in this text amendment lines through so we can better answer the questions of those in the public. And like it's mentioned, prevent incompatible fencing from being installed. And I think that may be one of the things that we're looking to kind of get away from here is, you know, we don't have our hand in a lot of the fencing, and we don't want to, which is why we're not going to require in the permit still, but we'd at least rather have an understanding of what's going to be put out there. So if it's incompatible or it doesn't meet any of the standards, that we could kind of nip it in the bud at the beginning rather than after they've paid all the money and built the fence.
Again, I asked you earlier before we got started, where's this coming from?
So yeah, this is again, community driven questions, comments as we receive all the time of, you know, how tall can our fence be? We don't have an answer for them, unfortunately, because nothing's listed out in the development ordinance in regards to fences, as they have been for so long of a time. You know, there've never been regulations for it. So we saw it as an opportunity to present some sort of regulation, and that's why it's brought before you today.
So I keep hearing community driven. Do y'all ever recommend any of those people to fill out the application for the text amendments themselves and have them come before us? I mean, I'd like to hear from the community. And, you know, I'm not saying that I'm not for change, but it's worked for years and years and years. And all of a sudden, we're trying to dissect our whole ordinance book with 45 text amendments last month and another 4 today. And I'm trying to figure out what's the angle. If staff shooting for a picture that they won't, explain that picture.
Yeah, if there is a picture we're looking for, I think it's just that I'm trying to, if there's something that we're looking to present, I guess, with all of these amendments is a common development ordinance that is easily accessible and flexible to work around with, rather than having to call and ask as many questions as a developer or a concerned citizen, where it can easily be depicted out and looked through in our development ordinance. I mean, as you can see right now, if you were a citizen that was calling in asking about fencing, the only thing that you could see in regards to there is no fence or wall or shrubbery shall be erected that obstructs vision. You know, what kind of question does that answer for you per se? You know, does that mean that I just got to put it 5 feet back off the road? Can somebody see that way? Do I need to pull my car out my driveway to see if what intersections I can see and bounce it off that? So I think we're more or less giving ourselves a template per se for future accessibility and I guess easy access to these instances in our ordinance, to where, you know, they're not having to call and check in. I mean, I enjoy talking to every citizen that I come in contact with, but there are a lot of recurring questions that could easily be answered if the development ordinance stated it out. And I think that's what's driving at least this one. on top of, the many questions coming from people inside the community.
Where did this verbiage come from? What town?
That is a good question. I am not 100% certain. I did not draft any of the ordinance that has been put in front of you. I've just been asked to present it. So I'm not 100% certain where it came from. No, sir. I do apologize.
It sounds like that a lot of what I've read in tonight's agenda is more of a Chapel Hill, Hillsborough, more of a controlled environment, and Graham has been a lax, when I say lax community, an inviting community
Mhm.
over many years, and
Yes, sir.
then we're coming with 3 pages of language about fences where we had originally, a quarter of a paragraph.
Yes, sir.
So I have a lot of questions about this and how strict it is and what it's going to do to the overall community. Anybody else got any questions for Cameron?
Well, I don't actually have questions, but I do have comments, Mr. Chairman, from the standpoint that particular ordinances or restrictions, the language in this becomes, if you will, tighter. I think they were written loosely in the beginning for a reason, to allow for the neighborhood to grow into it. And when you start putting too much restrictions, then where does it stop? We're going to eventually find ourselves, well, we got to go back and re-dissect this. This guy's fence is 5 foot high and it's 2 foot too long, or it's,
Mhm.
I can see over all of these. For instance, example, we had to put blinds on all these chain link fences not to be able to see into a junkyard, yet the road is 30 feet above the fence. So
Yes, sir.
it doesn't serve very well. So some of this language is a little more restrictive than I like to see.
Yes, sir.
Are permits required to put a fence up in Graham?
No, sir. And that's one thing we're not changing either. They've not been required as of yet, and we're not going to start requiring them now. I think we're just more or less, like I said, trying to put a little bit, it may seem strict to you all, but it seems more or less as a way for us to answer questions as well from the planning department too. When people come and ask how high our fence can be, how far it could be off our lot lines, et cetera, et cetera. Because right now, the only thing that we have to go off of, as I mentioned, is the vision clearance aspect of it and the fact that we do not require permits.
So when you get asked that question today, how
Mhm.
far it has to be off the property line, what's your answer?
Well, I think there's a specific, I've told them that it can be on the property line or right there along it. I think that's what the property line is there for, is if you're gonna put 2 fences together, that literally, that line in between those 2 fences where them poles touch is the property line between. So that's how I've always saw it. And the only other thing that I could really point to is that, listen, you have to, if you're at an intersection per se, like say, if your fence goes along this street right here and you got to turn right, that it has to be pushed back so it's not in that vision clearance. I think that's like 20 feet or so, give or take. I mean, on any intersection where you can see that little vision triangle. So that's where we got them right now. So
Mr. Christian?
I really appreciate what Justin's trying to do, and I know you're in a hot spot because Justin's out sick. To me, these changes seem forward-thinking and progressive. The city council has shown no appetite at all to do any of that stuff. This last meeting, they were adamantly opposed to any changes, wanted to be a complaint driven, want to leave Graham the way it is, which is sad. But I see no appetite from the city council to approve any changes in any ordinance.
that's fair. Yes, sir. If that's how you see it,
No, I think that's the way they see it.
okay, that's fine. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bias?
I have lived in small towns in eastern North Carolina that have gone through major population growth. When we've gone, and I've seen what happens when I've seen the need for regulation.
Yes, sir.
It was required in order for the town to grow in a in a way that made sure it maintained a small town feel and yet added thousands and thousands of people. I think these are the addition of regulations going to be required, and I think it's progressive, and I think it's needed. You're in the hot seat tonight, and thank you for being willing to
Yes,
sit in
sir.
the hot
It's my
seat.
pleasure. I'm still a part of the planning staff as Justin is. So I fill in when I can. Thank you
Um,
for having me.
I understand the city council the current city council does not have appetite for any of this whatsoever. And I have no idea how to deal with it.
Mr. Bailey.
I have no comment right now.
Cameron, I appreciate what you've done tonight and I hate you've been roasted.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm used to it.
But
I've dealt with y'all before. It's all good.
Roasted pretty good.
having said that, I'd like to make a motion that we deny the request of this text amendment, AM 2201. I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
3-2. Okay, let's go to AM 2201.
All right. Moving on to the next text amendment.
Recreation amenities.
All right. So now we'll be discussing AM. Oh, this is all the same. I guess they're all under AM 2201, are they? No, this is AM 2202.
Not the same
It's just
one.
labeled wrong on here. My apologies. So this text amendment is a text amendment for recreation and amenities. So staff has proposed the language below to create standards for recreation and amenities to be required concurrently with construction of a proposed subdivision with 5 or more units. Amenities required are based on a point system that is tied to how desirable the amenities are, and the number of required points is tied to the number of dwelling units and size of the development. And below, you can see the proposed language and change for the recreation and amenities. I do not believe there was any prior language to this, and this is just an addition onto the top of our zoning ordinance. So would you like me to read through the proposed language for you all? Or do you have a kind of general idea of what's going on here?
I have a general idea. Does the rest of the board?
I have a general idea. It's way too complicated.
I tell you, I'm not opposed to what I'm looking at.
Yes, sir.
I would like to see this integrated with the open space
Yes, sir.
Right.
and all in one ordinance. So if you use the open space
Mhm.
to reduce lot sizes, well, we're going to allow you to do that, but you're going to have to require to some of this. So I would like for staff, if it's my fellow board members' consensus here, to take this back and try to integrate and work this with the open space.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
I'm trying to determine as to whether or not this would have any effect on the open space. I believe that this was kind of drafted in the sense that we have something to require now to the open space subdivisions by requiring these in the recreation and amenities. Let me look through the ordinance real quick and see exactly where this is listed at so I can help you all out. Let's see.
I just hate seeing them take that open space and, we approve something as R12 and the next thing you know, they're using that open space because they got 80 acres in the floodplain
Yes,
that they
sir.
knew from day one, and you got some 6,000 square foot lots that they're building houses on. So in order to concede that, I'd like to see this integrated. Okay, well, maybe in that floodplain, let's put this park down there.
That's what we do on.
Yes,
special
sir.
use.
So actually, this did fall under the text amendments that are below do fall under the, they fall under our notes of our table of permitted uses, but it also follows under the open space standards of our ordinance as well. So I think this may be tied along to it. I can always take it back and look through some more determination if y'all need me to. I'm perfectly fine with that, and I'm sure Justin wouldn't mind either. I am glad to hear that you all kind of have the gist of what this is supposed to be and what we're trying to accomplish with this text amendment, as it is, requiring right now, we don't have much in our language that requires people that do use access of the open space subdivision where they're putting these amenities in, which is why the open space subdivision was created, was to house these amenities.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, what section did you find that was tied to the open space?
So it is right above. So this one, we have reserved space in our ordinance for 10.250 through 10.254. And this, of course, would be 10.251. And this falls under, let's see, yes, so it falls under 10.249, which is all in regards to open space provisions for R12, R15, and R18 zoning districts.
So this is interconnected with that through those?
Yes, sir. I do
sections.
believe it is.
Well, that's the gray area, I believe.
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
understand. From what I can see, looking through the ordinance and looking, it falls right under the open space criteria and is a direct kind of flow through as it's still talking about the 2.25. So, but if you see that we need to change this to make it specific to the open space, we can certainly do that as well. So it kind of delineates that gray area.
I believe that would be in line.
Yes, sir. And it could be me. It 100% could be me. And I do apologize if that is to you all and Justin, if he's listening. But that's just kind of how I'm reading it as presented. Is it looks like it's a parapet of going off the open space right now, but it's not specifically delineated in the red lines.
Well, you can see my concern
Yes, sir.
in that the way you perceive it, someone else may not. So that's why we want to make sure that it is actually linked. that
Oh,
way.
yeah. Yes, sir. I completely follow with you, Mr. Nash.
And I'm also concerned about the low number of 5. You know, we've got some partial land. I mean, I own 6 acres right here on Moore Street in Graham that I could put 5 houses on.
Mhm.
But you would require me to have
Dog park.
a dog park and some of this other stuff. And, you know,
No.
that just may not be feasible.
So
So I think that threshold is very low that might need to be raised.
I think where the 5 lots comes into play, Chair Ward, is that separates from a minor to a major subdivision. And the open space subdivision requirements only fall under the major when you're looking to subdivide 4 or 5 or more. So, you know, large subdivision scales, like somebody wants to put in 100 houses right here, but they want to use the open space provision. This is what they'll use off of it. So not specifically you, just trying to subdivide it into 4 little lots that you got there. That wouldn't be pertinent to the changes because it fall under the minor subdivision and wouldn't be used as open space.
But if I went to 5, it would be.
No, sir. And this is only if you look to use the open space subdivision requirements as well. So if
Okay.
you just wanted to use all your land and subdivide it and not use the open space, you'd be good. But if you want to use the open space and get them smaller lot areas,
Mhm.
this is when we're going to start requiring the amenities to come in.
Okay.
Because they're used for public, whoever
Yeah,
lives
I
in
feel
there per
comfortable
se.
with that.
So I'm sorry, I'm trying my best.
No, but that makes sense what you're saying there.
Okay, is it possible then to word that in the open spaces ordinance instead of creating a whole new ordinance to work in the open spaces requirements to have amenities in open space, the required open spaces such as?
Yes, sir. And we have like the uses and activities permitted in the open space area already delineated in our ordinance. So I think that's why it's kind of a parapet below is that we've discussed all the open space criteria stuff and what's permitted in there. And now we're going into, you know, what we're going to actually, well, I think so at least.
What we require?
Yes, sir. And the point system, you know, is always a huge help as well. For the public standpoint is, you know, the more points, the better, of course, and, you know, have access to public amenities along the line. And that's where the points come in, I guess, is more amenities, the more points you get.
So the points would dictate the type of facility that will go in, correct?
Well, the point system is based on, so the different type of dwelling units that we have, there's a minimum amount of points that are required.
Right.
So they have to use all of those in the point system. They have to pick and choose which one they need or which ones they want to use to get to, say, if they're just 1-bedroom units and they
Mhm.
got to get 6 points, they can pick and choose which ones they want to get that minimum 6 points that's required. So at least in this point, we're having them put in more amenities than they
Right.
probably normally would have put in before this, and is based on that point system where you're gonna have to get to this number regardless. This is the minimum that we need. You are more than welcome to go over as well, and in
Right.
fact, we invite it. But this at least allows a minimum standard to be in place. so that they can put the max or the minimum amount of amenity requirements in the area. So I don't want to put it like this, but we have a little bit of a tighter grip on, kind of what's going in some of these developments and the ones that are using the open space provisions that we allow for in our ordinance. And this gives us an opportunity to finally start, kind of putting the hammer down, like, listen, you have to put in a minimum amount of such compared to the point system.
Probably don't know, but I'm gonna ask, where did this language come from?
That is also a very good question, Chair Ward. I'm not 100% aware. If I had to assume, it was probably something along the lines of what you suggested earlier as well, which isn't terrible coming from a place like this, because we are kind of, I guess, similar in kind of how our growth is booming as there was whenever these ordinances were probably drafted as well. And I just realized I need to scroll down.
Those are,
I think it's good to get ahead of the curve on this one too. Instead of having okay, we've got a floodplain, we've got open space, that could be a soccer field.
Yeah,
All you gotta do is mow
I'm agreeable with tying this up into open space and working something out in open space, but this as a standalone, I would never force a developer to do this.
Mhm.
And that may be the decision whether he develops in Graham or not.
Yes, sir. I can 100% agree. And I understand. I just want to make.
But now if he wants to take advantage of our open space ordinance, and
Mhm.
I've been an opponent against open space from day one because of what I've seen happen over on Rogers Road.
Yes, sir.
That development that comes out over on Shannon, they approved that as R12 and, you got, I think 17 or 20 some lots that are 6,000 square foot because he used his open space.
Yes, sir.
He strictly played by our rules and he was able to achieve more lots and that's great. But we need to tighten that loophole up. And if you want to use it, we need something in return.
Yes, sir. Of course.
Amenities in that community, pocket parks would be great, stuff like that.
And this is what I think the amendment is ultimately looking to do. And it could just be an error on my end, kind of missing that little gray area with you, Mr. Benesh, and kind of tying that in. But I'd rather y'all be 100% certain before y'all make a decision. But from how I see it, it is that parapet of the open space provision.
One concern I've heard is that when you get large developments coming in, there's a need for recreational spaces in that area. And if we pay for it, we ask the developer to actually contribute towards that, whether it be pocket parks or open spaces or cash up or do we decide the city?
Could you explain to us again how the open spaces works?
Yes, sir. Of course. So let me pull it back up. I just had it right here. So open space is a interesting topic. Oh, I messed up. I got lost over here.
Nathan did have a good illustration. I don't know if it's still on there about that specific project on Rogers Road where they had 80 some acres that was in the floodplain.
Yes, sir. I think I
And
know where you're talking about, and I may be able to point it out on that map over there, but I don't want to get y'all's head turned and me get out of the way and kind of.
and so the developer was losing that space to build houses on.
Mhm.
So in turn, because of our ordinance, it allowed him to deviate so much open space
sir.
so he can make smaller. So we approved everything as R12. Council approved it as R12. And then he comes in with his open space requirements and says, hey, lots 1 through 21, these are 6,000 square foot lots. Well, that's not R12.
But the other 6,000 foot per lot is in open space.
So basically,
He's got a total number of acreage. He's got so many houses he has to build per acre.
That's right.
And so I could
Mhm.
build four houses per acre, is all R12. But in reality, he could build
A few extra.
houses per
So,
acre.
as you
and
know-
have an extra land sitting back there in the floodplain that he can't use. And what this is trying to do, or the open spaces is trying to do, is say, okay, besides just having open space in a floodplain that you mow twice a year for a soccer field, that you have to have a dog park, you have to have a pocket park, you have to have a playground, you have to do something
For the community.
For the community.
For
and
the
others
community,
other than
it's
the
gotta be some
developer.
community
Right.
use to
sir.
it. Like you say, it just
Yeah.
can't just be
Yes.
sit.
so basically, I'll say this, as you know, I mean, the R18, where we'll see like the R18, the R15 and the R12 are where the open space subdivisions come into play. In the R18, we require for subdivisions and, lots to be a minimum amount of 18,000 square feet per lot. So these people that want to utilize the subdivisions, the open space subdivisions now have access to, instead of using 18,000 square feet of the lot, they use 16,000 square feet of the lot in an R18 and have that 2,000 square foot pushed elsewhere on all the lots into one big open space or multiple open spaces where you can put in like that dog park, tennis court, pool, blah, 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 anything of the like, anything recreational wise that be. So it's only pertaining to those 3 districts, and it basically reduces the minimum lot area by 2,000 square feet.
But is it required to put something or just to have open space?
You're not required to put anything in at the present.
As of right now, it is strongly suggested, and
They're not
that's what the
required.
text
That's
is
not
here
required.
for. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Sorry, I might have misheard you. I apologize.
I think they need to be required to put something there.
So let's table this and let staff work on this some more and combine it. If it's the consensus of this board.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, we're just gonna table this. If y'all take it back and work on it a little bit more and come back next month with
Yes,
it.
sir. Do y'all need to motion on it, or you think you're good?
I think we're good.
All right, I do apologize if it comes back and it's the exact same thing. I just want to make sure we all, okay?
Don't be disappointed.
That's impossible with you all. I can never be disappointed. You all are too
It comes
old.
back the same way it's presented. I can tell you once again, that the city council will approve it because they have no appetite for progress. So that just won't fly with the city council.
Okay, Cameron, let's go on to AM 2203 text amendment.
Yes, sir, indeed. Oops. So this is a text amendment for exterior lighting. So staff has proposed the language below to create standards for exterior lighting throughout the city. Graham currently does not have measurable light standards. This ordinance will protect adjacent properties from light trespass and prevent site over illumination. And the proposed language is below for you all. If you would like me to read through it, I'd be more than happy to. But it basically just shows a lot of different lighting diagrams and how a lot of installation of lights may not take into account other surrounding areas. It may over illuminate or under illuminate street sides, any sort of alleyway per se. So this is something to at least have regulation in place for, a lighting plan to be supplied along with any sort of development, and kind of help us throughout our review process and, constructing these developments and going through that process, that we know that, everybody in the public has access to adequate lighting and everything else.
Sometimes our ordinances that we enact creates cost.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not opposed to a lighting ordinance, but when we start requiring a developer to submit another plan, that's extra money he's paying that architect. Can we not use a little bit of discretion and come up with something without requiring a plan to be submitted? I'm not opposed to a plan, but I've read a lot of this lighting ordinance here and talking about heights.
Mhm.
And let's go to Cherry Street and talk about that warehouse that's 40 foot tall, 20 foot underground. They're gonna subgrade down 20 feet. So if you got a 20 foot or 25 foot height, then you're gonna have part of the property that the light's only gonna be 5 foot off the ground.
Mhm.
That's behind the 15-foot berm. Go on there.
Well, still, it's 5 foot off the ground. So we got to think of everything instead of just, I know we got to get the whole overall picture.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not opposed to a lighting ordinance, but every time we start adding cost, it discourages developers.
I can understand that. Yes, sir.
And I think we need control, but I don't think we need overreach.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. I'd like to see if each one of us would want to go through each section and dissect each section and see if we're come to a consensus about each section and move forward like that, if that's okay, or if anybody wants to change anything per section. What's your thoughts, Mr. Christian?
Once again, I think the more things that we get head off at the pass before they come into a complaint stage, the better off we'd be. it's going to add cost. But if you want a nice development, if you want a nice building, it isn't a eyesore, pardon the pun, to the neighbors. The more, just like we did on the open space, the more you could require, the less chance of complaints you'd have, especially if it's done well. Light pollution's nasty. It's a pain.
Let's talk about Cherry Street. I mean, we're proposing putting 800,000 foot on top of the road. What would you expect to see? Nothing but light.
Mhm.
Sure.
But you can go down there and there's other parcels that are 500 and 600 feet off of the road. And that bleed over and light pollution is not there. So where would be the biggest complaints that staff gets about lighting? What would be the biggest complaint?
Yes, sir. I don't know if there's a general complaint, more or less just having it for future reference. As Mr. Crispin was kind of hinting at, is, you know, when we're doing these review cycles for some of these large developments, as you mentioned, you know, 40,000 square foot spec building going in industrial site. You know, the last thing that we'd want is to not have something in place to properly regulate. You know, I think that's what led to some of this light pollution that you all mentioned about, is not having something in place for us to allow for regulation of lighting for these proposed developments. And I know it sounds like a cost borne on the developer having to pay the architect, draw another set of plans. But I mean, you know, it's one additional set of plan for potentially less amount of harm in the future coming from any over bleeding of lights off of development over into another subdivision. And I mean, as you mentioned, with the one that's proposed, and there's a lot of talk around it, you know, the last thing you'd want is for that development to have over bleeding light that's pushing across the road and launching over there. Not saying it's gonna happen, but you know, you never know. And that's, I think, what this is more or less. I don't think this one was something that's been for complaint. It's more or less is just to prepare us for the future for, you know, a lot of these developments that are going to be coming through. And it also helps for the residential street lighting plan. If we're going to talk about, you know, having these recreational facilities and sidewalks for people to walk around, we want to make sure that there's adequate, you know, number of light poles around. I know our public works director does work with Duke Power in some of these subdivisions, putting in poles and getting some sort of lighting plan. We get them now, but they're not necessarily required and planned out to an extent as what is listed in here. And it cuts out on a lot of the, I guess, last minute efforts to try and install and propose and show where lighting is being drawn at. Because I think we're having to deal with a lot of stuff on the back end rather than on the front, when this would be required during review.
But you're talking about light pollution. So the city pays for street lights now in subdivisions. And they're 250 feet apart.
Yes, sir.
So what about that light pollution that's right on the road that's shining in my yard that I didn't want? How do you control that?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's particularly pertaining to our road lamps that are out in front of your house.
You brought up that Bert works with Duke Power about this street lights, and you said the term street lights, what made me ask that question.
Of course, yeah. I said that because this is one of the things that's recently popped up in one of my recent reviews, is that we're requiring a lighting plan, or we're asking for a lighting plan from one of these developments, because it is kind of upfront, because it's one of the things that's been left off to the last minute, and it's kind of been having to dealt between those two parties. And
But the city pays for that unless it's a decorative light. The city pays for it, so the developer has no say so where those lights go. Is that not true?
Sure thing. If you say.
If it's a decorative light, like on a pole, like down at the Challenge, the homeowners had a say because they had to purchase those lights. But it's still 250 feet apart.
Yeah, sir.
But if it's on a pole and it's a street light that's paid for by the city, there's no say so from anybody other than Duke Power saying we're gonna put it 250 feet apart.
Yes, sir. Okay. I follow. No, I'm just trying to,
I understand some of the concern about lighting and overlighting as the country switches over from incandescent and sodium lights to LEDs. And the cheap wattage, the cheap energy usage required to run an LED. I'm noticing in a lot of places that people are way overlighting places. So it's almost like a glowing spot for 3 miles away. And it's no comment. And I can understand the need to have to do that. Also, as developers are doing their developments, they have to come up with sheets and plans for how much they're going to spend on. where they're gonna-
Developers don't have to pay for streetlight plans.
Right.
Duke Power does that.
Okay.
Unless it's a decorative light,
Right.
then they would have to pay for that with Duke Power. Duke Power still does the design and would submit it for the city, but the
Homeowner.
homeowners buy the post.
Right.
But since you brought up LED, how many people's been riding around town seeing these purple and blue lights?
Yep.
From these streetlights, the LEDs. So we're gonna regulate the color too?
Yeah, because coming right up Pine Street, there's 3 street currently, a yellow, a pink,
Pink.
and a blue,
Right. That's
right
what
in a
she-
row.
Yeah.
So
right.
we're
I'll
open.
tell you, this is, I'll read this and it kind of sums up basically all of it, but the purpose and intent of it is to protect and promote the public health, safety, and general welfare by establishing criteria and standards for providing uniform lighting in outdoor public places where safety and security are concerns. Protecting drivers and pedestrians from disabling glare from non-vehicular light source that shine directly into the eyes, thereby impair safe traverse. Protecting neighborhoods from nuisance glare from poorly aimed and inadequately shielded light sources, and providing lighting which is efficient and compatible with surrounding uses and structures. So I guess my discussion in regards to the subdivision piece probably doesn't pertain to this as much anymore, rather as, kind of everything else. So we can just sidebar that and pretend I didn't say any of that, because I was just kind of going off top of my head. But it seems like it's more or less in the public places where, for say instance, like in a parking lot posts for adequate parking over at night, we need to have those in place in your parking lot. And we also need to have, something surrounding it so that, it doesn't get ran into or knocked over. There's traffic components of it as well that I believe that are tied in here. We do have discussion about maximum and minimum lighting levels, which could probably come into tie with that post that's out there. It may be that the degree of the light is too much and is therefore shining too much. But yeah, because you can see there's different delineations of like different foot candles, could be argued for which is minimum required and maximum required. So let's see, and there's uses associated with it.
I think this is a great solution. I'm looking for a problem.
You're looking for a problem?
No, I think this is a good solution. It's forward thinking, it's progressive, but we're looking for a problem. I can think of a couple places where I have been bothered by building lights. One of the old BB&T Bank downtown, if you went down Marshall and looked back towards the bank, one of their exterior lights was pointing right down the road. So you look like a train coming at you. And the other one's on that car wash on Webb Avenue in Burlington. It's
Mhm.
purple and green and blue and flashes. I'd hate to be in the house across the street.
Just look at our police department right here on city property. They've got them exterior lights that light up the neighborhood across the street. I understand for safety, they should have these lights after the incident that happened at the back door there. But are we gonna be a good steward then and go back and change? Being the city, if we implement something here, I mean, look at them tonight when you leave. Don't take my word, look at them.
I'll ride by. I believe you.
They're very bright, very
Yes, sir.
intense. They need to be.
Mhm.
But I think we're going overboard here.
Yes, sir. I can kind of see where you're coming from. I'll kind of point out that the foot candles and the lighting degree per se is, it seems like it's specific to the amount of foot candles that is required is basically what the lot itself adjoins or abuts to. So if it's adjoining a public or private right of way, If the use is not zoned or used for residential purposes, you can have 1 foot candle worth of light, which is not pushing into any sort of development or residential places. Whereas if it is adjoining it, you have to use 0.2, so that's minus 0.8 of foot candles, I guess. I don't know what that looks like in comparison to brightness, but I guess that's
It's a
kind of
big
what
difference.
what it's laid out for. I can understand that it's a solution looking for a problem per se. But I guess it's at least a hindsight that the problem will never persist if it's already available.
Do you have any, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, uh, surrounding cities that have any ordinances similar to this?
I'm sure so. I'm sure that there's
Well, you're saying you sure, but I mean, are you comparing
Well,
it to
yes, I'm
who,
not-
Chapel Hill or Raleigh?
I'm not the one that specifically drafted these text
I
amendments.
understand.
Like-
I'm just asking the
I-
question.
Yes, sir,
Would
I
you,
completely
would you
understand.
believe that there's another city close by that has these type of regulations
You,
in place?
would I believe that there are?
Yeah.
Or would you like to know? I, for one, am not 100% sure what kind of lighting plans that the surrounding cities or
Well, the
municipalities
reason I
have.
bring that up, excuse me, is we're a growing city and we want to be concerned of what we put in place as far as lighting concerned. Plus, we're having to deal with a lot of stuff that's going to be grandfathered. You have a list of exceptions too that can have a whole lot more lighting that, like even in the historic districts. My point being, if we want to grow and want to grow progressively, we want to do it in the right way. We don't want to go overboard with this thing and make it so tight that, again, like Chairman Dean said, that, okay, you're going to have these lights that are required to be 20 foot high, but you're sitting down in a buffered area, but you don't know how much light is going to actually filtrate below that buffer and actually into someone's eyes coming up Cherry Lane or into any housing area in and around there. And my concerns are, if we use the language as written, it may cause us to have to go revisit this and start correcting mistakes that we may not have entertained in the
What
beginning.
kind of mistakes do you see that we're going to have to change per se? I'd just like to get an understanding.
If I could be a crystal, if I had a crystal ball, I could look into that, but I can't put my finger
Yes,
on
sir.
everything right at the moment. But
Mhm.
the vagueness of some of this,
Yeah.
it scares me. I'm with Mr. Chrisman as far as being proactive instead of reactive. I like that.
Yes, sir.
But I'm a little concerned that this needs to be ironed a little bit more.
Yes, sir.
To specific areas require this type of lighting.
Okay, yeah. And you mentioned crystal ball. I mean, we also don't have a crystal ball to see what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
That's
but-
why we kind of propose these things, is to attempt to make an understanding of what could happen in the future and how we could better.
But
our
if we
ordinance.
know, okay, subdivisions require this type of lighting and this type of setback,
Yes, sir.
ball fields require this, of course, that's an exception and it just
Yes,
popped off
sir.
the top of my head, but certain areas require, and this doesn't address that except for those few that are listed.
Okay, yes, sir.
You see where I'm going with that?
Certainly. Yes, sir. I follow along with what you're going for. If that's how you see it, then that's just how. I don't know what other way I can kind of get this across to you. I wish I could. I really do. If I'd have wrote this hand for hand and been able to come up here and present it to you, I'd probably do a lot better.
I guess that goes back with what the chairman was saying. Where did this language come from? I'd like to know.
If I could tell
myself.
you,
I know you don't, but
Yeah,
it would. Planning and zoning is difficult when somebody's already planned it for you.
do you think planning and zoning's already been planned out for the future as well?
What I'm saying,
Yeah.
if you got one author of this instead of say 5 or 6,
Mhm.
then you didn't have the 5 or 6 people put together these ordinances. You had one person give it to you and then you have to decide whether or not it's right or not.
So are you questioning whether or not that we just drafted this up off the top of our heads or got?
Well, you can't answer
yeah.
that either. I can't.
Well, I can, and we did not. I mean, it just didn't come off the top of their heads. I I mean, I can almost attest that it probably came from some other sort of
Municipality.
ordinance. or
Municipality, okay.
It was definitely nothing, something, I mean, that he was just one day, it's like, oh, we need a lighting plan. Let me get to start the writing real quick. I promise you, that's probably not what happened. And the proper research was done into many other municipalities for these text amendments. And it's not that we're just bringing, these multiple text amendments for you just because we want to enact change. I don't think that's the case. I think the research has gone into it, and to
Well, I don't doubt the professionalism that went into it. It's just that it's a big pill to swallow at one time when you're trying to analyze each and every type situation that you're having to deal with.
yes, sir. All right, understand.
I'm not ridiculing it at
Yes,
all.
sir.
I'm
No, I'm, this is
trying to
just,
get the positive out of it.
yes, sir. We're just having a discussion. I'm right here with, you.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Just looking online, real quick, Mr. Burnett,
Yes.
there's all sorts of lighting ordinances from cities. Here's one from Asheville. The dark light or dark sky initiative. So there are lighting ordinances around. So it's just, I'm sure Mr. Snyder didn't.
Oh, no, I wasn't trying to imply that at all, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, I understand that, but, and I understand the need to get ahead of the problem.
Mhm.
I just don't know how to do that right now.
But that's exactly where I'm at, Mr. Crispin.
More discussion.
Yeah.
That's what I'm having a problem with.
Yeah.
I think it just needs more discussion.
Fair enough. Yes, sir.
Do y'all,
I wish I could offer it to you.
is it a
I- I-
consensus to
I'd
pull
like
this?
I'd like to make the motion to table this.
Got a motion to table it? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Work on it.
Me?
Yeah, well.
I'm good. I'm not good to
Staff.
go to the next. Well, no,
Staff.
you said opposed and then looked at me. I was trying to make sure you weren't trying to get a motion
No,
out of me.
No, I know you're not
opposed.
opposing
I
it.
don't know if I have the property authority or respect to sit up there. So I mean, I don't know. So.
Let's go to AEM 2204.
Yes, sir, indeed. This one is for a text amendment for accessory dwellings. So a summary is staff has proposed the language below to create standards for allowing accessory dwelling units in residential districts. Currently, Graham does not have standards for them, and thus they are permitted. Yet the aging population and the desire to age in a place and live with kids outside the home make this an important amendment. This also allows a bit more density without being obtrusive, and it frees up other dwelling units for people to move into without requiring development of land. And the proposed language is below that I could read through with you all. I know there are probably some questions in regards to this, so I will answer any that you all may have to the best of my capability.
I'm gonna let somebody else start this time.
I see no problem with having additional dwelling units on a piece of property on a case-by-case basis with a special use permit. Have a carriage house, have a mother-in-law suite above the garage or something like that. I have no problem with that.
My only concern, and it's not a problem, is someone that owns 6 acres. And you're telling me I can't have more than one accessory building on my property?
You
Or
got a
what-
barn.
Right.
Well,
That's-
no, that's not the case. It's one accessory dwelling.
Dwelling,
permitted.
so-
Yes, sir.
I mean, I got 6 acres there. If I want to put something else out there,
Well,
are you trying to eliminate B and Bs or something?
no, sir. So that's just particular to the dwelling unit. Again, you're allowed one accessory dwelling unit. You're still allowed accessory structures and accessory buildings on the lot, but you can only have one accessory dwelling. So you could have your garage, and then you could have your pool house, and you could have what other storage shed that you'd like, but it's just the one accessory dwelling. Because that, when you get a 6-acre lot and you're starting to put, 3 additional dwellings back there, it turns into almost an ununified subdivision. So you're still allowed to have your garage. You can have your tool shed over there too, but you're only allowed to have one granny pot.
In addition to your dwelling?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So you got your house,
So you
your
put your
primary
mother-
structure.
put your
So that's
mother-in-law.
your primary structure, and then you got your accessories. But now originally it was just classified into 1 or 2 accessory building / structure. Now it's going to be accessory building / structure and accessory dwellings per se. So the building and structures will be specific to your accessory uses like garages, tool sheds, things of the like that don't have housing requirements and don't need to meet state building code. Whereas when it's now specified as a dwelling, we have something in writing where, it has to meet the state building code, has to have all the aspects of living, being sleeping, eating, cooking, using the restroom. Whereas it's not required in something that is be a garage. So I know we've received a lot of questions in regards to this about people having these accessory dwellings, multiple granny pod questions, pool house questions, and then people that just want to have a garage. And then they ask the question, well, can I build another house back here? It's like, well, not as it is right now. No, sir.
Essentially, you're saying I could have 800 square feet.
What's that?
The
You can have
accessory
800 square
unit
feet?
does not exceed 50% of the heated living area of the principal dwelling
Or 800.
until or 800 square feet, whichever is less.
Yes, sir.
You can put an apartment above it.
Well, it's not for, I think you're trying to see it as it's going to be a second house. That's not the case. This is an accessory dwelling unit for,
Apartment, I mean, 800 feet, is not a lot.
well, it's
A lot
not
of
an
people's-
apartment. An apartment is multiple stories with multiple units around. I think this is more or less just an accessory dwelling per
Well-
se, like another house.
I know of locations in the city have garage apartments.
Garage apartments?
It's a detached accessory building
Mhm.
with a living quarters in it.
Yes, sir.
So I call that apartment. And it may not be classified as apartment, but it's an accessory dwelling. 800 foot is a little small. Think of a
can always-
bonus room above a garage.
Yes, sir.
Some bonus rooms today are,
Oh, yeah.
very large.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if they're 800 foot or more than 800, but
If
some
you
of them.
got it like that, go for it. I mean, if you can build a bonus room bigger than 800 square feet, more power to you. But
got 20 by
if
20
you don't like the
garage,
800 square
24.
foot discussion and you think that 800 feet is not enough, you can always open up the discussion of allowing more. I mean, if you want 1,200 square feet, that's something we can change and bring it back and forth. I mean, certainly it can be up for discussion. If you think 800 square feet is not big enough for somebody that wants an accessory dwelling unit, if that's what you're holding up on, kind of trying to make a decision, we can easily kind of bring this back in front of y'all and have the discussion again if you wanted to kind of exceed, and we can change it and bring it for you.
If you got a 20 by 20 garage or 30 by 30 garage, you're 900 square feet there, so
What if you got a 70 by 70?
that's garage.
That's
Okay.
huge.
So that's my concern is that if I want a in-law suite or something on a property
Mhm.
and I've got a large building there and I want 2 or 3 bedrooms in it or 2 bedrooms in it versus one, 800 is like a studio.
Right.
Maybe something over downtown Graham, what are they, 600 or 800?
Probably smaller than that, yeah.
It's like a studio and I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud.
Is there a
Yes, sir.
size that you prefer? Is
How was that?
there a size you think would work
I
better
think that's
than
what I was trying to
800?
get across. What size seems reasonable per se to kind of allow for these? Like what's the minimum or maximum you see that is fit for somebody that is looking to go into a granny pod or something per se? I mean, if I was
1,200?
1,200, I mean, if you think 1,200 is fine, I can always get Justin to change this 800 to a 1,200 and bring it back in front of you.
I
Yes, sir.
mean, certainly,
It may open up for more discussion with him though. I
you're
don't-
right, and I am opposed, but I'm not dead set against 800. But when you start talking about that and storage and the in-law quarters, if I had to move my mother into my place
Mhm.
and it was an accessory building I built on the property, there would be no storage there for 78 years of junk that she's accumulated,
Well,
trying to put it in a 800
I'm
square foot.
trying to.
All
So
that's gonna
your
be yours
concern,
anyway.
I throw mine away.
You
So
have all
that-
so would you just put her in the garage and put a bed in there, or would you build another unit?
Some people, here's a good prime example, down at the Challenge, at the very end
mean-
of Challenge Drive,
Yep.
there was an individual
Yep.
that built a nice house. He bought the lot beside him, put an accessory quarters on it,
Yep.
and combined it into one lot.
Mm-hmm.
Go down there and look at it. very,
And he
very,
had a three-car garage. That was
And a
two-car
three-car.
Garage on it.
and
then
it
that's
looks
accessory.
very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think it's 1,200.
Yes, sir. And I mean, it's unfortunate that you'd have to kind of go that route to put in an accessory dwelling unit on your lot. And I guess that's one of the loopholes you can go through to kind of get it
Right.
enacted like that. But you know, we don't want people to have to jump through those hoops to kind of try and put in a granny pot back behind their home. So
And-
if you stuck on the 800 square feet, I think we can work around with that.
What's your thoughts on it, Jim?
I'm totally in agreement with what you said, Chairman. Ward, in the fact that 800 square feet does sound like an awful lot. When you start putting stuff in it, you run out of space real quickly.
Mhm.
Especially over 50 years of junk that's been accumulated that they don't want to throw away.
that's what you get.
And you got to put it somewhere and they want it in their house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call a yard sale.
And you,
Hey, that's you still can build another accessory building out there to put it all in. You ain't got to worry about it now. We're not limiting the amount of numbers.
I think a good approach with that would be to change that, give them a little bit more leniency.
Yes, sir.
50% or 1,200, I think would be sufficient there. I really believe that everybody's moving into things that are larger now.
Yes, sir.
The thing that I grew up with was 6 people in a 4-room house.
I know.
Didn't have enough room. Now you got 2 people in a 6,000 square foot house. I mean, that makes no sense.
You
you
still
know?
don't have enough room.
You
Hey, it
still
could have been,
have-
it could be those people that grew up in those scenarios though, you know, I mean,
But
people
now you
wanting
got
some more
4
space now.
bathrooms, You grew up with 1 bathroom. You
Exactly.
Still ain't got enough space.
Yeah.
I know.
Get out
exactly.
the bathroom.
So I would support what Chairman Dean said.
Yes, sir.
or
And
Chairman
it's-
Ward's given.
It's all just open discussion.
1,200.
I'm not being rude. I promise.
And I'd like to see that 50% taken off.
So just a minimum blanket square
Well, what if,
footage.
you know, I keep going to the what ifs.
I understand.
What if it's a man cave and you want to go out there and you get mad at your wife and you got a nice man cave down there and it's 1,200 and all of a sudden I start putting living quarters down there because we're not getting along and next thing you know, somebody's calling the city and complaining on me
Mhm.
and y'all down there pulling the tape.
Yes, sir. That's an interesting what if question and how that would kind of be proposed because, you know, off
Because
the,
you know, one or the other's gonna call and complain, whichever one's living it, the other one's gonna call and
Yeah, if your
complain.
garage is bigger than the house you live in.
yeah.
So take the 50% off and go to 1,200. I think I could probably live with that.
Yes, sir. Well, I'll,
Well, no, don't just do it on mine. I want
yeah.
to see what this board says. If they disagree with me, we'll take a motion and we'll go and see what we come up with.
yes, sir.
And walking around North Graham, there's a large section of houses. I've noticed a number of houses are up for sale lately that are hitting at 800 to 900 square feet, 950 a lot of times. So I don't think that's too small. My concern is we go too high, someone can build, we get, that was great. That section of town from going down Providence, that's what, right. Providence, that neighborhood south, a lot of those houses, you can go back there and build a 1,200 square foot house if you get the next division.
Plus houses, Woodway Park are probably 1,200 square.
And I agree with the conversation there that I agree with that. But most of all of the developments being built today are much larger. What was built 60 years ago and then what's being built today is much larger. And I don't know if you want to do it based on a R factor.
That could be incorporated as well. If you see that the minimum lot square feet is something that needs to be kind of looked at and along with it, definitely be something that we could insert or research.
Maybe 50% of the footprint of the house.
Talking about like,
If you got a 2-story house and it's 600 square feet, you got 900 square feet of footprint.
Then you put 50% in, you only have 450 to work with.
Right.
I feel like that there's a lot of work being put in this and I really feel like something can be accomplished. But if I want to skirt this and get around it, I just tie a porch from this house over to my accessory dwelling and it becomes all in one as long as I meet my setbacks and stuff that you can say to.
There's always going to be, people are always going to find workarounds for, I mean,
But
they're lawyers. they can do
we've
that.
got an opportunity to get ahead of that.
it's accessible, you know, as I mentioned, a lot of this stuff is accessibility having the stuff in place for people that want to ask these questions to be able to look it up and research. It also provides that blanket being that this is whatever is required. So kind of determining a number per se or percentage that you all may find one to be accessible or understandable, then, we'd be more than happy to work in whatever opinions you all have. Ultimately, it comes down to what all you all think.
Well, I'll entertain a motion. We've hashed this one out a long time. I'll entertain a motion.
You just go.
I make a motion that we table this once again to straighten out the verbiage in it to where it'll be passable and plausible.
Got a motion, got a second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Does anyone oppose? Moving on.
Moving on.
AEM 2205,
Yes.
coal
sir.
mining.
Mhm. Crypto mining indeed. All right, let's take a look at this.
This is something here.
Yeah, so this is rather interesting. I
Yes.
mean, it's new, it's upcoming. We've had many discussions over this. I'll just go through the summary. So staff has proposed the language below to create standards for crypto mining operations. These operations, while seemingly low intensity, are actually quite detrimental to the environment and surrounding properties due to the amount of energy usage, noise created, and the electronic hazardous waste generated. Because this is an emerging technology, the technology is still highly inefficient. They generate enormous amounts of increased air pollutants to produce energy needs to run the servers, mines in this case, such as carbon dioxide, fine particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and sulfur dioxide. They generate kilotons of electric waste that must be specially recycled due to hazardous materials contained within. They also generate a lot of noise from the humming of the server fans. Additionally, they use power on orders of magnitude above a normal industrial generator, which has a huge impact on the power company's ability to provide low-cost power to residents of Graham and North Carolina. Most entry-level mining operations use 20,000 times the energy of a single house, and the industry at large uses enough power to match some countries' entire power usage. These standards will help protect the city of Graham from the potential impacts by creating parameters within which they can operate and by having input from local energy providers before they are allowed to begin mining. So this one is honestly is interesting to me per se, and it's a lot to kind of dive in and indulge upon because it is something that's kind of brand new in the technology field. It's not often quite heard of. Cryptocurrency is slowly becoming the next dollar, people want to say. And the people that are wanting to get in on all the fun are continuously wanting to start doing crypto mining facilities and things of the like. So that's why we proposed the text amendment to foreshadow ourselves for anybody in the future that wants to come in and create one of these facilities.
How many complaints have we had on the one sitting up here on Maple Street?
To my knowledge, I do not know.
You don't know much tonight.
If you would like to, I could follow up with the code enforcement officer to review any complaints that may be lodged on this property, but unfortunately, that was not delineated prior to.
I've noticed in the ordinance here, proposed ordinance, you talk about the noise.
Yes, sir.
I've had an opportunity over the past 4 years to enter this facility right here on Maple Street pretty regularly
Yes, sir.
every year. And this humming noise that we're talking about, never heard it. These loud noises, I've never heard it.
Yes, sir.
I would be willing to bet if we check with the Graham Police Department call log, there's never been a noise complaint
Mhm.
at that location.
Yes, sir.
The doors are not even closed on it. They never close
It gets hot in there.
because of the temperature in
Yes,
there.
sir. I will,
How are we going to distinguish, and me and you had this conversation prior to the meeting, between a crypto mining operation and a data center?
And I did look in between the meantime, and I did try and find something that speaks specifically to data centers in our ordinance, and I really couldn't find anything. So this is the delineation between, honestly, I mean, could you explain to me what a data center is? Is it
Google Cloud,
Google Cloud?
okay?
So those are the facilities that house all the
They
different
got
sorts of,
facilities 10 times bigger than this with servers in there that store all this information.
mhm. And I'm sure that's,
Say people like that.
that's a lot more regulated as well through a lot of other things. No, you know,
You know, you're talking about hazardous waste. Can you be more specific?
generally speaking, from one thing that I could think of is the graphics cards that are used on some of these servers. You know what a graphics card is?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. That's one thing that
There's not a graphics card on these servers.
there's not.
They don't even have any monitors hooked to them.
Well, yeah, I'm aware of that. They're all just a single. Are you 100% positive there's no graphics card associated with crypto mining at all?
One terminal, the
One
programming terminal.
And it has a graph.
Sure, they got to have it there.
Like your laptop.
I mean, really, I mean, you go in there and all you see is CPUs. That's all you see. You don't see no monitors nowhere.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yes, sir. It's not just a many computers like this set up across the room. It's
You just see-
stacks of servers.
To the ceiling.
I'm pretty, I think, I'd like to think I'm aware of something in regards to the crypto mining thing. That's why I brought up the graphics cards, because I've had and seen crypto mining facilities that use graphic cards. People sell used graphic cards that have been associated with crypto mining, because you have to get rid of them because at some point they just break down because you use them so much because they sit and stay on.
This facility down here, the name of it's Hash Masters. Go by there and knock on the door. They'll walk you through it.
Yeah.
They certainly will. I mean, they walked me through it many times.
Mhm.
Now I'm like a regular down there.
Yes, sir. I'd love to. I'd love to go in there and check it out, what's going on. I'd love to see what kind of setup they have. I would definitely, certainly do. And at the time, there wasn't anything in our ordinance that had any regulations for the crypto mining, and they went in there under what use, I'm not 100% sure. I can't find an active permit for them, but
Storage space, warehouse storage space. They're storing CPUs.
well, they're not
Sure.
storing CPUs. They're using the CPUs as almost, it's one thing to store CPUs, but when you use the CPUs as a matter of financial gain, I think that takes the storage aspect out of it.
So every use in a building. So if we open up a heavy industrial site wherever,
Indeed.
and a new building comes in and they got 300 servers in there, are we going to hold them to the same standard?
Cryptocurrency, virtual currency, and blockchain mining facilities.
But
This is what it will be
singling out. We're not talking about data centers. It's the same operation, just a different purpose.
If you say so, if that's how you see it.
Would
Are you-
think that the planning staff would agree that when you start talking about using computers to store information or look for information on, it would be similar in nature without going and specifically saying, okay, we're going to have a text amendment for data centers, we're going to have one for cryptocurrency, and we're going to have one for banking.
Mhm.
So what does that do to all the teller machines out here,
The ATMs.
ATMs?
Those are specifically stated in our list of permitted uses. So there's regulation against those in our ordinance because they're specifically stated.
I appreciate the concern for the environment. Once again, that's progressive. Once again, that's something that the city should be addressing in everything the city does. And trying to be a good steward of the earth. But I would think that if, instead of having this big, long, but maybe it's necessary, all this verbiage, to say crypto mining or virtual currency or blockchain mining facilities, or just like adult bookstores, they're not allowed within the city limits.
You saying that the cryptocurrency, you just don't want them to be allowed in the city limits at all?
I mean, there are other things that aren't allowed within the city limits. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Well, no, there's, no. I mean,
Do you have adult entertainment?
No adult entertainment, yeah.
I mean, there's
That can
adult
be-
entertainment, but we have regulations. for
It's
it.
regulations for it. You
Right.
can have it, but it's regulations for it.
Yep. Fayetteville has-
It's specifically.
How do you
stated on
know?
ordinance about
But I
adult
lived there for
establishments.
18 years and I served there for another 10.
And you went
to the
Texas Club too, didn't you?
Let me tell you something, that used to be a wild place, but it's cleaned up now.
Where does it stop? Tell me where it stops.
Where does what stop?
If we're gonna control everything that a person can do on their property, every single thing, without complaints, where does it stop? I mean, what's next? Here's a business that's been open and all of a sudden we want to regulate what comes into Graham. It goes into an existing building. They're paying their taxes. They don't use very much water. They're not a large water. They don't employ very many people,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still a tax base there that's coming to the city for that piece of property. And that building that was on that property that sit vacant for many years after Mr. V.L. Manuel airplane, it wasn't a disaster, but they kind of split ways, the partners and stuff, and some moved to Gibsonville.
So you just had an open building right there.
So it's just an open building and it was a field for that building.
Yes, sir.
So, I'm totally against the overreach of the government. And I feel like sometimes we got great aspects and great admiration of what we're trying to achieve and get to. And sometimes I feel like we're out there on an overreach.
Okay.
And I'm just one person. That's just me saying that.
Huh?
I guarantee you, if you've done your research and you look with the city, the police department's never been there. You won't have a noise complaint there. There's no noise. Is there e-waste generated? Probably right much. But
You were asking me if there was. You seem to think that there wasn't much. So
e-waste, as far as these miners go bad.
Yeah.
And they do get rid of those. They
Is it-
rent a dumpster from my company a couple times a year.
Mhm.
And I look in it. I want to know what's in it. I want to make sure you're not throwing no monitor in there or
they got things with little fans on it
no,
running around in there.
none of that's in my stuff.
Hmm.
Because when I get to the landfill and dump it at the landfill, the first thing the county will say, hey, CPUs are not permitted back here. They have to be recycled. So they recycle that stuff now. I don't know where it goes, nor have I had any dealings with that.
Yeah.
But I don't want us to tie people's hands of wanting to come to Graham. I don't know why we're out there on that journey.
Yeah.
I know we're trying to get ahead of the curve,
Mhm.
but let's be, because we don't have a use for it, and we got one here, now we want to regulate.
Well, I think it's more or less is because there's not a use listed for something like this. Not as more or less as it's not listed, so we can't permit it per se. So I mean, when we're having to tie it to the closest use, there's really not one that can be closely related to something along the lines of crypto mining or data centers with what we have kind of in our
Why
uses of
But why wouldn't they be in the same regulations as ATMs?
as
It's financial. You got to use the next closest thing. It's financial. That's what you said a while ago.
I'm trying to figure out how crypto mining and
What does-
ATMs are kind of in.
What does it
similar
pertain
line.
to? Money.
No, it pertains, I mean, sure, it pertains as a service, as an extension of a bank to provide their public to have access to cash money out and deposit money. It's not a use in it. I mean, I guess it is a use in its own, but this is not a ATM. This is a storage, or not a storage, but
Can you get money from it?
from what? From the ATM?
No, from crypto.
You want to drive up there and grab them from out the machine? I
No,
don't think
No,
so.
you
You'd
can,
have to
you
extract.
have,
it from
you have the
online.
app on your phone that takes money from what they've mined. So having said that does it not fall under the regulations of same as institutions of banks?
I don't think so. Not in my opinion.
It would follow the institution of banks, just like a gas station would follow the institution of an oil refinery.
Exactly.
No, they're two different things. Because an oil refinery is making the gas
Yeah.
is distributed it.
What,
So,
When
I
you
mean,
start-
we're talking,
you
we're
s-
talking,
and when you start
Whatever.
talking an ATM, what do you get from ATM? Cash.
Oh, yeah.
You get cash out.
Yes, sir.
What is crypto mining? What's it relating 100% to? Financial gain.
To mining crypto.
And what is crypto? It's currency. It's a form of currency.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so then what my argument is that we say we don't have something similar, but we do.
You're stuck up on the price piece that I was bringing up in regards to, because originally you were trying to compare it to just a blanket, what, shell building or something, or
No, I
something
just said
along the
that,
lines, but you were concerned about the use inside as if, how does this use inside pertain to the building as a whole? And I was just trying to explain that, it's not specific. It's specific to what's going on inside, not that,
I haven't ever had a problem of the use inside of the building, but I, I haven't ever looked at it on the aspect of what you're saying either, that you're trying to get ahead, but when you start putting, well, you got to have a special use permit to do, or conditional zoning, or a special use permit to operate one of these now, so we can put more and more regulations on them.
And then also, if you have a building that was non-conformed, and then you have that particular unit in it, and they either tear it down or move out of it, then it no longer conforms. You cannot put anything else in there except for what you
wait, what?
took out of it.
We repeat, so they're taking the use out of the building and it's just a spec building now. I mean, if you take, the building itself is the building, that's your shell. We're regulating what's going on inside of it. They're not gonna leave the mining facility inside of there. They'll move the mining facility out, and then it's still another industrial site where you can bring in another industrial use.
I'm reading here that any non-conforming cryptocurrency mining operation may be replaced by the same use only in compliance with these regulations.
Yeah, so that means if the place down there were to move out, that a new crypto mining facility could only come in if they would meet these standards as they are right here.
Which is what he was trying, Chairman Ward was implying that you have a crypto mining operation in there now with no regulation.
Because there was none in place.
Right, now moves out, and now we're going to restrict one coming back in because we put regulations on.
I don't know if it's much as restriction as more or less as, making sure that the public surrounding the facilities' health is maintained and taken into account with some of these regulations. I mean, that's kind of what's being proposed here. I don't think we're trying to regulate people not to come in for crypto mining facilities. If anything, we're trying to invite it by establishing it into our.
You may not be inviting more industry to come in to take over that building, doing the same type operation, because we enacted these restrictions that were not there in place before. So they may go somewhere else.
And
That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay, yeah.
and strictly under 10.291.4, under the standards, it already sets up to be crypto mining facilities may locate only in the CI, conditional industrial district, upon review by approval by the technical review committee, city's attorneys. The city's attorneys, what else do they look at here? So it's like we're trying to make it harder for them to operate here. I'm not saying we are, it appears to be that, and especially conditional zoning, conditional industrial zoning, so I could put any condition on them if it comes before us, correct? So I'm totally against this. I would never support this in any form or fashion like this.
Is there anything that we can change to make you? No, not at all.
No, I think this is an overreach by government, not staff, government.
Okay.
And I think it's just an overreach that we're trying to limit what people can do with their properties in the city of Graham. We've got a council member that lived right next door to that building for all his life until it's opened up 5 or 6, 8 years ago. That building opened up as a crypto mine. He's never complained about it. There's a couple rental houses right directly next to it. I don't see, until the fire starts burning, I don't see a need to put water on it.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. There's 4 other opinions up here besides me.
Yes, sir. I'm aware. Any other comments from the planning board? I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you all have.
On the same section on subparagraph E, the use of cargo containers, railway cars, semi-truck trailers, and other similar storage containers or any component of the operation is strictly prohibited. They're storage trailers storage tractor trailers all over town. And are they prohibited anywhere else?
What section was that again?
10-291.4 standards.
E.
E.
Thank you.
I mean, could I put a cargo container in my backyard and use it for storage shed?
Yes, you actually can,
Yes.
because it's defined as, how we define an accessory building is anything with 4 walls and a roof. So you're more than welcome. I actually just permitted a lady to put one in her backyard, but it can't have any commercial stuff on it. So if it had, whoever does the seaside manufacturing or
Yeah.
distribution, they have to take that off of it. I
Yeah.
couldn't think of one, I'm sorry. But I mean, if they had that, they'd have to paint over it, so it couldn't be
Right.
commercialized. But it is considered a building because it has 4 walls and a roof.
My brother's got one, it's yellow. Looks good.
Yeah.
40-foot high cube container.
They're making those mini houses.
Is,
I've seen those. Those are very nice.
Yeah,
They've
they're-
actually redeveloped a lot of places with some of those cargo containers, and
That's
they
right.
look really, really good. They've done some in Raleigh,
Yep.
very
I
nice.
seen something on TV last night
Yeah.
where a contractor done one 4,000 square foot strictly made out of these containers.
Mhm. And they're
Looks
affordable
really nice.
too. I
house.
think they've done a lot of them with affordable housing. They've done a really good job with some of those. It's a very, very good project for some of the people. I was working on one prior to leaving.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion, we use this, or deny this request.
And I second it.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Uh,
Aye. Any opposed?
Let me rephrase that in accordance with grant comprehensive
2035,
and 25-35 plan.
2035, not 25.
2035.
Okay, the hot seat's over with.
I love it. Hey, the discussion is always, I may not provide,
No, it's productive.
I think so. I mean, the discussion's open and it can get a little back and forth, but I mean, that's kind of the discussion you gotta have in some of these scenarios. And I understand people have different opinions. as
Well,
well.
it's good to agree to disagree
Correct.
because in order to iron out wrinkles, you have to flip the shirt on both sides.
Yeah, and I want to make sure my front's wrinkled and my back's wrinkled, because people always look at me from behind when I'm walking away. So that's how it goes.
All right,
I'm
we're
right
gonna-
there with you, Mr. Burnett. I know, you pulled fast one on me right there.
know.
Hey, man, you got
It
me.
must be in the
You got
the
me.
cleaning business.
That
man.
came from my grandma, by the way.
Hey, listen, I have a lot of those same sayings that come, y'all be surprised. I
He
come from
went way
small
back
southern
with that
town. Well,
one.
I know all about it.
Number 8 here is public comment on non-agenda items. I would like to, since Vicky, you got anything you would like to add tonight? All right, since there's no other public here, I'd like to talk just briefly about a potential solution maybe staff can come up with for circumstances like tonight with Mr. Cox not being able to be here. Could we offer Zoom?
We ran into this before. I ran into this whenever I first started working here, and I think we had to accommodate somebody that wasn't able to participate in person.
That was me.
When you advertise it as a public in-person meeting, from what I heard is, I don't know if you can allow any virtual attendance. It all has to be public and in person. That is what I received the last time I asked about it, Chair Ward.
Can we not advertise it both ways every time?
I think you can, yes, sir, if absolutely necessary, but it's hard to kind of, in Jason's case, this isn't something that we could have predicted when we wrote the agenda out and scheduled the hearing.
No, but what it may also do is allow a board member
Yes,
who
sir,
may not be in town to jump on and attend the meeting.
indeed.
Remote.
We'd have to see how we could set that up, because I mean, of
We've
course-
done it before, where
Oh, yeah,
3 members were here and 2 were by Zoom.
and I haven't dealt with that specifically here yet, and that's why I said we'd have to see what we'd have to do. I was one that should pertain to, I would have to see what I'd have to, excuse me, sorry. But, yes,
just-
I think it'd have to be advertised like that. I think it's just the advertisement of it that is specific.
Would you accept public comment with via Zoom too?
Yeah.
Certainly, I think that would certainly be okay. My only reservation would be is that we need to be sharp on what you could allow.
Yes, sir.
I know I've talked about it a couple of times. There's a case that's been turned over in the city of Burlington where they held a Board of Adjustments over Zoom and didn't ask the defendant if he would like to waive his right to in person. They ruled against him, and when they ruled against him, he appealed to Superior Court
Yeah, that
and
was-
got it kicked back, and he gets another hearing.
Yeah, it was illegal.
So I want to make sure that if we do it, that we know that we're operating within the confines of what local government says we can do.
Just checking in, have you all had a chance to meet Darby? She's the new city clerk here. I should have introduced her at the beginning and I feel terrible now. But she's been doing a wonderful job. She started not long after I did and Justin did as well. So all new familiar faces.
She's actually was here before you and didn't come back.
Really? Oh,
So
news to me.
Darby needs to apologize for not introducing you.
Darby was here before you, and then she left and for a little brief sabbatical, and then she come back.
That's fine. That sounds, I did not know that. I did not know that. She's got more tenure than I do. That makes sense.
Well,
Y'all seem to like her a little bit
Interrupt
more
her.
anyway. So
we like
I guess-
everybody. We treat everybody the same.
I know you do.
Hey, I appreciate if you just check on that. Let us know at the next meeting or let Justin
sir.
let us know. It might eliminate because it's been, as long as I've sit on this board, it's been this board's practice
Yes, sir.
that if a petitioner does not come before us, 90% of the time we turn it down.
It's hard.
And then when you turn it down, he's got to wait 6 months before he can come back, or he's got to come back with something different.
Mhm.
I'm glad we was able to agree to table it.
Yes, sir.
But if we had another option for him for extenuating circumstances, we might could have
Yes, sir.
dealt with this tonight and it went on to the council next month.
And that'll have to be advertisements for probably not even just planning board, but all the other boards moving forward is that, you know, if not push comes to shove, but if like something were to arise in a situation like that, and especially with COVID being how it is and a lot more contagious, it may need to have to shift to half and half, you know, half Zoom, half in person, half web, however we're going to do it. So definitely something we look into.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate, we roasted you tonight, but
Are you gonna adjourn?
I got a question.
I'll,
yes, sir,
What are our regulations on feather flags?
they're not permitted
Where?
all over,
Anywhere.
anywhere.
You want to talk about? what we
What
know
kind of
about?
flag?
We have,
Feather
I know,
flags,
I think,
not US flags. These
I can
little-
envision one
dancing
set.
buildings.
I know
Oh,
there's a
yeah,
second
yeah.
set, but I'm not sure where it is.
It's right down the street on the right.
it's not at the Bojangles, is it? I told them they couldn't have none out there.
Well, there's a new car dealership
Oh, gosh.
on
Hardin?
Hardin Street.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
And they're new, they probably didn't know.
I'll take care of it.
They're not permitted.
Yes, sir.
Then the box company across the street had two feather flags out also.
Where at? Across the street?
The packaging company across the street from the on the diagonal corner from the car dealership.
Oh, okay, so they're
They've
right
got
there in the same
employment.
corridor.
Employment feather
I'll,
flags out there.
And on the Hardin and Maple, the used tire place, of course, there are no longer flags out there. They're just the remnants of
Remnants of
flags.
flag.
I'm sorry. Hey, if y'all are riding around and see anything, please call me. I'll get it taken care of. But I'll go out there and ride it there. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
they're
Durham. Mr.
brand new.
Christie.
They look sharp.
Yeah, they do.
They do look good. Is that what you're saying?
It's vertical litter.
You know, we've had this discussion. I mean, it was very lengthy discussion, and we just couldn't come to no compromise. And then the council took it up, and I think they ultimately said no.
I think it's understandable. They are interesting, especially, I mean, being on that hardened overlay as well. I think there's specific stuff in our overlay that doesn't permit them as well. So we'll have to look into that. But I'll ride out there tomorrow.
Well, the problem mainly is they look good when they put them out there, but they leave them out there and they get tattered and worn and just look
Mhm.
terrible from that point on.
And I think there is a way, I'm not sure if there is or isn't a way that they can have it for temporary uses.
Well, it was like the old
Yeah.
temporary signs they rolled around.
Yeah.
They got way out of
I
hand.
know.
The temporary never becomes
It
permanent.
does, it does. I know, and it's unfortunate. I mean, you give people an inch, they want a mile, and they'll take it every single time, that mile, for
They'll find a
sure.
way.
Yes, sir.
They're like raptors.
Any further business tonight before we close?
Yeah, I would like to make one motion.
You got it, Mr. Crispin.
Motion to make the adjourn.
I was gonna make sure y'all ain't forget about that. 'cause I swore you
And
were.
I will second that, Mr. Crispin. All in favor?
Ah.
Ah.
Please cut your mics off.